Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome and introduce Dr. Robert Murphy, the Executive Director of the Havey Institute for Global Health and the John Philip Fair Professor of Infectious Diseases here at Northwestern's Feinberg School of Medicine, who addresses the latest COVID headlines and answers your COVID questions every Tuesday and Thursday, right here on the Havey Institute for Global Health's Facebook page. And today, Dr. Murphy will be answering viewer questions and addressing the latest news through today, the 22nd of March. And we invite you to continue to submit your questions to us should you have them via Facebook at NU Institute for Global Health or via email at globalhealthinstitute@northwestern.edu. My name is Kristen Weber. I am the Communications Manager with the Institute. I will be leading the discussion with Dr. Murphy today. Dr. Murphy, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Diving right in, the statistics are still looking good as we've been discussing these last few days. We're still seeing these drop in cases, solid percentages in decrease in both deaths and hospitalizations. However, should point out, as we did on Tuesday or on Thursday, progress has not been as swift in regards to death. We're still seeing around 1,200 deaths announced most days. Do you expect this to decrease? I mean, we're continuing to seeing the number of cases drop, but what do we think about this number of deaths still happening?
Well, death is the metric that is the last to improve. So that's one thing. And the reason for that is that we have learned how to take care of people better. And people are partially treated with the vaccines, with the oral therapies, now with the monoclonal antibodies, if they get in the hospital and they have one that works for it, steroids if they need it, anti-inflammatories if they need it, other anti-inflammatories. And so we know how to treat this better. And now the hospitals are not overwhelmed, So, they can, a lot of effort can be put into treating people that are hospitalized. So it may just, we can keep people alive longer, but, ultimately, people are still dying from this disease. And people shouldn't forget that.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully we continue to see those numbers go down in the coming days. We'll definitely be keeping everyone updated with.
Nice to see the death rate come down, right?
Yes. Diving into our first headline here, with this new BA.2 variant, health experts are saying they predict a slight uptick in US COVID cases due to this variant. Dr. Fauci saying the BA.2 is about 50 to 60% more transmissible than Omicron, but does not appear to be more severe. What can you tell us about this new variant? I know we've talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this is happening around the world. The Europeans, like I mentioned, are a couple weeks ahead of us at least, and South Africa too, and they are seeing the same thing, an uptick. It is more contagious, but compared to how Omicron was to Delta, which was 300 to 600 times, 300 to 600% more infectious, this is only in the 30 to 50% range. So we're going to see this probably a little bump due to this BA.2. The next thing we have to be careful of is a completely different variant.
Absolutely. And speaking of that slight little bump, it looks like that's what's currently happening in New York City right now, with COVID cases just up nearly 10% in a week. Do you foresee it staying around this, or do you see them seeing a larger jump? What are the experts?
Well, I mean, I think this is what we expect. These kind of it's a blip up. It's a bump, not a blip, but a bump up, and up 10%. Okay, that's not that much. It's still all at a very kind of low level. So we'll see. So, but that's what's happening around the world and in Europe too.
Now let's moving into our third headline. So we have research recently came out showing a higher risk of developing diabetes after being infected with COVID-19. What can you tell us about this study that was published in the Lancet, and what do you know about it?
Well, all I know is that this was a large study. It's a new study. It's reported in Lancet Diabetes and Endocrinology, which is one of the Lancet journals, very highly respected journal. And compared to people that didn't have COVID, the people that had COVID had this 40% increase in a new diagnosis of diabetes after having COVID. So that's pretty odd. But, you know, diabetes has been tied in with COVID from the beginning as a risk factor. So there's something about diabetes that puts you at risk, and now it's showing that COVID is a risk for diabetes. So it looks like they're really intertwined there. So it's just yet another little problem with COVID. COVID is not, you know, we don't see that after the flu. We don't see that after having a cold, but you'd have a 40% increased chance of having diabetes. Now remember, it's not 40% of people. It's a 40% increase over people that didn't have COVID. So, you know, the numbers are not as, you have to be careful how you interpret the numbers. It's not 40% of people.
Well, that's good to know. Thank you for helping us to interpret that correctly. I'm certain that, you know, more information will come out regarding that, but just another reminder why we don't want to get infected with COVID. Moving into our next headline. So doctors are finding hurdles to using these pills to treat their patients with COVID-19. You've talked about these pills, these COVID treatments. What can you tell us about why doctors are having some difficulty getting their patients to take these?
Yeah, so there's two pills, okay? Paxlovid, made by Pfizer, which is a protease inhibitor, and it has two drugs in it. One makes the other drug work better. And molnupiravir, which is a polymerase inhibitor. Both of them have shown a benefit. The Paxlovid had a 90% decrease in hospitalization in high-risk people and death. The molnupiravir wasn't as good, but there still was improvement of about 30%. So it's 5 days of treatment. It's 3 pills twice a day with one and 4 pills twice a day with the other one. And the thing is, they do work, but the studies have shown that you have to treat people early. So it's all based on the first day of your symptom. If you get any kind of symptom and you are high risk, you've got some underlying disease or you're older, you need to get one of those rapid tests really quick. They're very good when you have symptoms. They work better than when you don't have symptoms. And if you're positive, get a hold of these pills. Now, the reason why it's so difficult is there's no real plan to get people hooked up with the medication. The pharmacies have it, but you know, they may not be stocked. You got to get your doctor to call in an order. You know, it's really disorganized. There's no like real plan. Some states are making plans, and in the recent White House plan for COVID, they actually address this issue and state that there should be some kind of organized way where once you're diagnosed, you're high risk, you would immediately get the drug. And then we've got to be careful with all this stuff, because right now the government's paying for everything. But you know, that wasn't part of the last bill that passed that got cut out. So either there's got to be a new legislation for this, and you know, and any further booster vaccines. Otherwise, the funding will run out for buying this stuff for everyone.
Oh man, well, that leads us into our last headline with the FDA's meeting coming up here on April 6th. Will the FDA approve these additional COVID boosters? What can you tell us more about this meeting and what they're expecting to decide?
Well, there's 3 things the FDA is going to be looking at. Some of that will be on April 6th. Some of it may be at a different date, but in the very near future, they're going to be talking about boosters with the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. Both companies have applied. Pfizer applied for that second booster shot. So that would be 4 doses altogether. The 2 you got, then you waited 5 months, and then you got a booster. Now they're going to be reviewing data that shows that another booster shot would be beneficial. So Pfizer applied for people at high risk. So in other countries, Israel, I think it's 60. There was one, I can't remember the country. They just picked 75 years of age. and Sweden is 80 years of age. So they're looking at older people with high risk. And that's because all of a sudden the hospitals are full of people who've had the vaccine, and including boosters, but they were older and sicker. Now, Moderna, they just went in and said, if the booster's going to work in them, it's going to work in everybody. Everybody should just get another booster. So there's those two applications. The companies will be presenting the data that they have, which often has been reported sporadically in the press. The other thing that the FDA has been reviewing since January is Novavax, the Novavax vaccine. So that vaccine should have been approved last summer. And they had some manufacturing problems. However, those have been resolved, and they submitted their application in January. It has been approved in several countries around the world, including Australia. So it looks like it works as good as anything else in preventing severe disease and death in the 90% range. And it's based on the old technology for vaccines. So some people who don't want to take an mRNA vaccine for whatever reason, even though billions of people have taken them and seem to be doing all right, and they were, but there are some people that don't, just for whatever reason, don't like that technology. If they want to take a vaccine based on the older technology that most of our other vaccines are based on, take the Novavax. I have people asking me about, they're waiting for this. When is it coming? So it should be soon because they did apply in January, and we're already at the end of March, and so we'll see. So those three things are coming up, and the FDA should be making decisions shortly on all three of those things.
Good to know. So more to come. Well, let's dive into some viewer questions. Our first one, we have someone inquiring about if there are any testing sites here in the Chicago area that will diagnose and treat COVID on site. Assuming you would be tested and if found positive, be given the prescription for the pill, or inquiring if they have to go see a doctor. So it looks like this individual is inquiring about any site that will do both diagnose and treat it without having to see a doctor.
This is a good question. I don't know specifically, but I know there are plenty of places, outpatient, urgent care clinics and the like, that do COVID testing that also treat other diseases. And so unfortunately, you're going to have to do your homework based on your neighborhood. You're going to have to look in your neighborhood, see where you can get tested, and actually call them or contact them by email or something, and find out if they can also order the treatment if you're positive. And this is the crux of the problem with the treatment. This is very important to link the testing, test positive, get treated. So that's really what needs to be done. So, but you're gonna have, there are places that do it, but it depends too much on your neighborhood. So there's nothing I can comment. And some places do it and some places don't.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully more to come. I feel as though that would be definitely a step forward in the process. Our second question, this individual is wondering if it makes sense for them to wear a mask as they go out to stores when their husband does not. She feels the need to wear a mask, but he doesn't feel that need. Is there an issue there?
You wear a mask if you want to wear a mask. And I think, especially here in the Chicagoland area, I don't think there's that much stigma of people wearing a mask. In some parts of the country, I mean, if you wear a mask, if you go into a place, I mean, you're harassed basically. Here, it doesn't matter. And this lady wants to wear a mask, she should wear a mask. She is protected more if she wears a mask. If you want to wear a mask, just wear a mask.
For our third question, now this one is fairly straightforward. However, I know there's been a lot going on in the news discussing immunocompromised folks as these mandates have been lifted, masks have come off. This person is inquiring, will immunocompromised people ever feel safe? And I know that is a vague question, Dr. Murphy, but I feel as though it's a good question. What are your thoughts?
No, it's a great question. It's the question. Very important, because their immunocompromised status is probably not going to go away. They got to live with this, and it's different from the rest of the people in this whole pandemic. So all I can say is, if you're immunocompromised, there is a safer way to do it. Wear your mask more than other people. When you go in rooms, especially or any kind of crowd, wear your mask. Make sure you're up to date on your boosters, because some people who are immunocompromised can get a 4th shot right now. But after April 6th, we're going to find out who else is going to get it. Stay up to date on your boosters. If you're severely immunocompromised, you can get Evusheld. That's the injection, which they just doubled the dose on, by the way. That will give you 6 months more protection of these monoclonal antibodies. And then if you do get sick, like I just mentioned, get tested right away as soon as you get symptoms. And if you're positive, go find some Paxlovid. And if they don't have any Paxlovid, take molnupiravir. But Paxlovid works better. So, if you can do all those things to stay safer.
Absolutely. Our 4th question, is there a test available that would show whether they have sufficient levels of antibodies after being vaccinated and boosted? Any test where I think generally they can test their antibody level at any time they're curious about it?
I wish, but the answer is no. There is no test that is going to tell you you have enough antibodies or you have enough immunity. First of all, antibodies are only half the story. You have the cellular immunity on the other side that actually prevents the severe disease and the death. So, and there are tests for that, but they're laboratory intensive and expensive, and nobody does them. The antibodies are cheap, so everybody measures antibodies all the time. But there is no test. If somebody tells you there's a test, they are lying. It is not true. The test doesn't help.
Good to know. That is not available.
I wish.
For our last question, this fairly is in line with the folks that wondered about the immunocompromised folks feeling safe. This couple have been declining invitations, have been very cautious because of COVID over the last 2 years, and they really don't want to take any unnecessary risks even at this point. They're very terrified of a breakthrough infection. One has Crohn's disease of over 40 years and high blood pressure. They have seen an endocrinologist for a parathyroid issues, but don't take medication for this. Regardless, whether or not it would lead to hospitalization, if they were to contract COVID, of course, they don't want to get it. They're wondering if you have any advice or insight for this couple that is fairly cautious, and it sounds as though they are a bit immunocompromised.
Yeah, it's basically the same answer I just gave about the other immunocompromised condition. So, yes, you have to use everything in the toolbox. Stay up to date on your vaccinations, stay up to date on your boosters, wear a mask when you're around other people, avoid really indoor crowds as much as possible, but don't end your life. Wear your mask if you have to be around a lot of people you don't know and you're concerned a lot of them could be at risk. You can get the N95 mask. Those work a lot better than the surgical mask ones, but even the surgical masks work. So, get a good mask. And then if you get sick at all, you test yourself immediately with one of these rapid tests. And if you're still concerned, go get a molecular test like PCR. And if you're positive, take one of those pills that are available, Paxlovid or molnupiravir. And there'll be other ones following suit. If you do all that stuff, you're going to be fine.
Well, thank you, Dr. Murphy, for that advice. That is all of our questions and headlines today. So thank you so much. We will be back. We are taking a few days off, folks. So we will be back next Thursday. So
we're taking a week off. So
we will take a week off, but we will be back with our news. So please do send us questions and we'll see you in a week. Thank you, Dr. Murphy.
Okay, thank you.